It's December of 2023, and I am selling my Sony a7IV. Why would I be selling this camera when it is, as the kids would say, one of the most goated cameras ever to be created? So before we dive in, if you are wanting to learn more about the a7IV is absolutely fantastic camera. I made a course on the topic of this camera, but I also have a bunch of videos on this channel talking about this camera, settings that I would change, how to shoot with this camera. But if you really want to dive down and learn everything that there is to know about this camera, as far as its shooting modes, so that you can get out there and shoot better images with your a7IV, check out the link in the description below to my a7IV Fast Start Guide course. Now, I shoot a lot with the Sony a7IV. I actually had two of them. I sold my first one that I had purchased about a month ago, and now I'm selling my second one. And these aren't my only cameras. I do shoot with the Sony a1. I've had the Sony a1 since it first came out. And when I'm doing professional shooting for clients, I'm typically always using my Sony a1 and bringing a Sony a7IV as a backup. And often I'll be shooting the a7IV, just getting like maybe B-roll shots if I'm shooting video, or putting a different lens on it and using it as a secondary camera. The a7IV is absolutely fantastic. It does everything. It is, in the true sense, a hybrid camera that is what most would say is within the affordable range for a camera of its feature set. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the Sony a7IV, and for most use cases, no reason why anybody would want to sell their Sony a7IV. But I've been exploring other cameras and have decided on a camera that's a better fit for me as a more everyday carry camera. Now, the Sony a7 line camera bodies have gotten a little bit bigger over the years. When Sony first broke into the mirrorless market, their camera bodies were a little bit smaller, and they've gotten a little bit bigger, which is great because the ergonomics have gotten better. They're just overall a much easier camera to use, and they're still not that large of a camera. But for me, when I want to carry a camera around with me and be more portable, I'm not needing all of the features of my Sony a1, but I want a camera that's extremely capable and something that is a little bit more portable. There's a different camera that I have been using for the last month or so. So let's set aside the a7IV. We're definitely going to compare a little bit to the a7IV as we talk about things here. I've got my Peak Design Everyday Carry Sling, and I'm going to open this up and pull out a camera. Can you guess what it is? Maybe you should hit pause and guess down in the comment section, and we'll see if you got it right. I am pulling out the a7CR. Now, this camera, of course, I've got the 16-35 on it right now. I've been using it with a lot of different lenses, and this is not necessarily a compact setup right now, but paired with some smaller lenses, it definitely is. The reason that I have this lens on here is because I actually did a real estate shoot just the other day with this camera. Why I might go with something like this. This is maybe a confusing camera if somebody wants a hybrid shooter, because the a7R5 that has been out for a while now is a extremely powerful camera. It is a hybrid camera because it shoots video and photos, but it shoots photos much better than it shoots videos. And this, of course, is the tiny version of that camera. So let's talk about some of the differences between these two and the reasons why I decided to choose this little camera. Number one is being it's just more compact. It is a bit smaller. If we look at these camera bodies side by side, you can see the size difference is relatively substantial. If all I'm wanting to do is carry a camera with me and have it around to capture different things that are going on throughout the day, then a smaller camera body is definitely necessary. And I typically would be using something like a 35mm G Master or one of the small compact G lenses that Sony has released a few years ago that pair fantastically with this smaller camera body. The difference in weight between these two camera bodies is 144 grams, and that's pretty significant, being that the a7IV weighs 659 grams and the a7CR weighs 515 grams. It's noticeably different when you're carrying that camera around with you all day long. Resolution is a big one for me. With this little camera, I'm getting 61 megapixels, and it also has the pixel shift technology that allows me to get up to 241 megapixels, where it takes multiple pictures really fast and merges them together to make an extremely large image. That's the dumbed down version of what it's doing, but it is producing a massive image. And so high resolution is great, because if I'm going to go for a more compact camera with a shorter lens, being able to shoot at a higher resolution means that I can crop in if I need to. Whereas if I tried to make the a7 IV compact with its 33 megapixels, I'd basically have half the amount of resolution to work with, because this camera maxes out at 33 megapixels. Now, one thing that I do often talk about in a lot of my videos where I discuss cameras is ISO performance. And ISO performance, if you look at just the numbers, you would think that the a7 IV is the clear winner, because it has a maximum normal range ISO of 51,200, whereas this guy here has 32,000. And so you would think that you're going to get less performance out of this camera, but we're talking about having double the resolution. And so when you take a picture at double the resolution, even though it may look a little bit grainier, when you scale that image down and put some noise correction on it, you're starting out with 81% more pixels to begin with, and that's going to be much easier to reduce noise. So if I do need to use some noise reduction in Adobe Lightroom or something like that, it's going to have an easier time because of that larger resolution image with more data to work with. And so I'm not typically going to be shooting in extremely low lit situations with this camera anyways, and nor would I be with the a7 IV. I would most likely be using my A1, because the A1 has superior low light performance compared to both of these cameras in the first place. Now, stabilization is another feature of this camera that goes further than what the a7 IV has. The a7 IV and the a7CR both have 5-axis stabilization, but the a7CR has 7 stops of stabilization, where the a7 IV only has 5, which is still great, but there's more stops here. And what that means is that I have more latitude in slowing down my shutter speed in those low light scenarios. So going back to talking about ISO performance, of course, ISO performance is maybe less as far as numbers go on this camera, but I can decrease my shutter speed. So whereas with the a7 IV, I may have been able to hand hold at 1/40th of a second shutter speed, I can get down much lower with the a7CR because of the additional stops of stabilization that are there. So that difference in ISO performance by the numbers isn't necessarily that big of a deal when you consider the additional pixels that you're capturing here, as well as the additional stops of stabilization. Now, the a7CR also has improved autofocus over the a7 IV. This has that AI autofocus, but also has the ability to track more types of subjects, such as vehicles and insects, and there's a whole slew of other ones that are in this camera. And that makes it a better everyday carry, where you might be taking pictures of different things, and you want the flexibility of having that advanced autofocus. Now, when I do shoot video, I always shoot in 4K, and sometimes I do go up to 60p. Now, this camera still has a crop when you shoot in 60p, but it has less of a crop than the a7 IV. The a7 IV has a 1.5x crop when you go into 60p, and this camera has a 1.24 crop, which is a substantial difference. And so if I am shooting in a more compact nature with this camera and not having a whole lot of lens to work with, maybe a zoom lens, not having so much crop taking place is a really good feature. It makes this a better vlogging type of camera than the a7 for if you were going to be shooting in 60p, which, I mean, who really needs to shoot their vlogs in 60p? But people say these things in videos, so I guess I might as well also. Now let's talk about my initial experiences with this camera. So the real reason that I initially bought the a7CR was to compare it to the Leica Q3, and I made a video about that, discussing it and discussing why I chose one versus the other. But as I started using the a7CR, I started falling in love more and more with this camera because of its compact nature, because of the high resolution images that it captures, the performance of the camera overall, and the ability that I have to still switch out lenses when I want and use this camera in a lot of different scenarios. So I still have the camera, and now I'm using it to replace my a7 IV which was my go-to camera for grabbing and going and capturing just anything and everything that I had going on around me. Now, as I round off this video, let's talk about which camera would make more sense for you if you're watching this video trying to decide which camera to purchase. Now, if you're looking to purchase a new main camera, like this would be your main camera for shooting, I don't necessarily know if I could recommend the a7CR unless the compact nature and the increased resolution were the main features that you're looking for. The a7 IV is still an insanely capable camera. It is still one of the best cameras that's on the market, considering the fact that it's several years old now. This camera is great. It has 2 SD card slots where the a7CR does not. This also allows for CF Express Type A, which the a7CR does not. This has a full-size HDMI port, which the a7CR does not. This has a more traditional viewfinder, like a more SLR-style viewfinder, whereas the a7CR has more of a rangefinder, and it is very small, and perhaps the resolution isn't as great on it because it's so tiny. The a7 IV also has a wider range of buttons, and buttons that are configurable than the a7CR. So as far as a main shooter, if this was going to be your main camera, and you wanted to be shooting photo and video with it, the a7 IV is still probably a better option. It's definitely cheaper, which means you're going to have a little bit more money left over to perhaps buy an additional lens. And so if you're thinking about budgeting for the a7CR, you could definitely get yourself an a7 IV and a lens for the price of the a7CR. And so there's a lot to consider there. The main reason that I am going with the a7CR, and I actually am packing up and shipping this camera after this video, is because of the compact nature of this camera and its performance. It does outperform the a7 IV in pretty much all of the ways that I would be using it. And it's not going to be my main camera. My main camera is the A1, and I would choose the A1 for professional shoots because of the dual SD card slots, which gives me redundancy, the superior low light performance, and the more configurable nature of that camera. I just shoot faster with the A1, and even with a camera that has more going on with it, like this camera, than with a little camera like this that has less buttons and less knobs. That means you have to go into the menu a little bit deeper to make some settings changes. But that's okay. This is not my main shooter, as I've said many times. So that is why I'm getting rid of my a7 IV, an absolutely amazing camera. I know that probably within the next year, we will have an a7 V. I would guess that in 2024, we would likely have an a7 V. And so for me, this camera has reached the end of its lifespan with me. Not that it's been used much. This camera is relatively new, but as far as its time with me, that is over. I am moving on to the a7CR. Let me know what you think about my decision down in the comment section below. What camera would you have chosen? Would you have gone with the a7C II, which is more of a little brother to this camera as far as features, price point, and all of that good stuff? Or would you go with the megapixel monster that is the a7CR? Let me know down in the comment section below. I've got some links in the description for you should you be looking to purchase either of these cameras. If you use the links in the description, it helps support the channel. Doesn't cost you a thing. It's Amazon and B&H affiliate links, and I would appreciate those clicks. So thank you so much, and I hope to see you back in another video soon.